All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Bebiuk. I'm with AICHE here in New York. Welcome to Improving Process Safety Performance Evaluation with a Cloud-Based Solution. And thank you to our sponsor, AcuTech. We encourage you to ask questions and we want a dialogue during this presentation. So please feel free to ask questions, or you can type them in the chat as well. I'd like to introduce you to Dave Moore, who will be presenting today.
Thanks very much, Tanya. I'm very pleased to do this and also to be a gold sponsor of this important conference. It's growing every year. We've been to it and sponsored it in the previous 2 years, and this is a record number, I understand. So the topic is fascinating. I'm here to give a talk about the idea of using cloud technology as a modern approach to doing audits in a superior way. And I hope you can see my screen now.
Yep, You're good.
And should I do slideshow mode?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me close this down. Oop.
Looks good.
There we are. There we are. So I call this Improving Process Safety with a cloud solution. And what I'm really talking about is something that we've been 4 years developing and we're now using internally. It's not a commercial product at this time. It's something we use with all of our clients when we have assessments, but the potential, it potentially will be released if we can get interest. We're actually looking for companies that may want to be beta testers for this. The entire idea behind it, and I'll give you just a brief overview and then we can have a conversation. In fact, I have a few questions that I'd like to do as a poll. But the entire idea behind this product is we feel that to achieve operational excellence in process safety, you have to, of course, audit yourself. And the customary way to do that is about every 3 years. But if there was a way to have literally continual input on where the variables that you're auditing stand at all your sites around the world, and you have dozens of sites, that I think would be quite valuable. So our goal is to develop a continuous process where companies can put the finger on the pulse all the time and try to, through better measurement of all these variables that they normally only do periodically, that they can improve process safety performance. So we also want to try to improve the auditing process to make it more standardized and repeatable and truly a better process than it is. And the premise of this whole tool is that today the auditing process and then the audit data that comes from it is both incomplete, not very well managed, and it's not very well used to help improve process safety. Most audits are taken as a one-off exercise every so often, like getting a grade from a test, and are then used to perhaps change some things and are maybe quickly forgotten when the audit team leaves. So we looked at all the audits that we do, and we wrote the CCPS guidelines on auditing, by the way. This is a core service of ours. So we've done literally hundreds of audits. And what we notice is that across an enterprise, people are often doing inconsistent approaches to auditing. Maybe using different teams, different protocols, lack of a protocol, what have you. And they're also really doing, because of the practical side of the time they have available, they're doing by exception. They're sampling, they're looking at a few things. Also, they're only doing it periodically, and you could argue very infrequently. Like, for example, in the US, every 3 years it's expected under OSHA PSM. A lot of companies have adopted that as a standard. They often are qualitatively describing findings, but not necessarily. They are not ranking, and they're not benchmarking against best practice. And it's really not easy, if almost impossible, to benchmark against all other companies that are doing a similar type of process to you, or all other companies that are practicing PSM. Or I want to compare myself to the upper 10 percentile of companies that are really leaders. And how can I do that? So with that, we're looking at how can we be more progressive about this whole thing through technology. Now, there we are. So for one thing, we want to have a benchmarking capability. That's a part of this. And some people use this today. They are essentially using a 4 or more level system to try to, at least within what they know, maybe within their own company, see how they're performing. Are they really leading, et cetera? But how about if we could have, through the cloud in a big data application, be sharing this information, if people would allow it, in order to truly have performance information that is integrated and available to everyone. Should I do the waiting room?
I've got it. You're on mute, Dave.
There we are. Okay. So we call this tool Acuity. Acuity is a word meaning insight. And really, what we're trying to do is give people better situational awareness of their operation. Because how else can one really maintain excellence if you really don't have that control? So we've done all this. It's a Amazon Web Services hosted cloud tool. We developed it from scratch. We put a lot of time into it. If you're interested, we're happy to have you try it on a separate call. But what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to minimize these issues that we think are constraints to people doing the best job they possibly could in the management of this problem. The macro problem is improvement of performance of the enterprise entirely, and lesser problems would include the consistency of that and being able to compare yourself. So we call that a lack of risk visibility. So this is a screenshot of the dashboard. What we're trying to do is, for an enterprise that might have anywhere from 1 to hundreds of sites around the world, we're trying to create a cloud tool that they can deploy a standardized template or series of templates for different purposes, maybe process safety auditing, and they can rigorously go through that either periodically or quarterly or as required. So for example, in a real-time system, it would be that as they are making progress, there would be a change of that. So in the end, the scores that they got could be recorded for the record, and they could see improvement. And what gets measured gets done, so we are a real proponent of all that. So we developed a standardized template. There's lots of features to this that I don't have time to get into right now because I'm more interested in your feedback. But it has the ability to store all the data, photographs, integrate this if you wish with Zoom or what have you, in order to do this remotely, and have all of the information there and do this together and do it perhaps more frequently. And I think that's the trick. If I only practice once every 3 years and otherwise I'm not really sure how I stand, that's the best I can expect improvement. The issue of standardization is something that also is an issue, and we're looking at trying to minimize inconsistent risk evaluations. So this just says that we can create standardized protocols like this one here of our version 1 of our PSM protocol, and we can deploy it across the whole enterprise. And then we're getting consistent results. And we can see in real time, as you can with any cloud tool, how people are doing, where they are, what questions they're struggling with. You can analyze this as a big data application. We also think that information is siloed. and there could be errors which could lead to poor quality of data. So again, by giving them guidance as well as being able to see this and really, truly working with the questions they're asking, the responses they're giving, and so forth, we think we can improve the quality of the information, therefore allowing us to integrate and merge this data, get trend analysis, and so forth. So that's really what I have to say, and I'm kind of interested to see what you think of this, and maybe we could start that discussion with these 4 questions. So would you mind doing the polling, Tanya?
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is, and if you have the ability to help us here, like I see you're doing, we're all too experienced at Zoom these days. I'd be interested in, just frequency. It's common that people do process safety audits to some regulatory requirement. That's why you're probably seeing 3 years come up, because that's a US standard, and sometimes that OSHA standard has been adopted by other nations even, or by companies for their global operations. So that doesn't really surprise me that we got 52% every 3 years as a comment. I am impressed with the one that does it yearly, and that's our thought. Our thought is no one loves auditing. In fact, you may be quite uptight when you're experiencing an audit, but given the viewpoint that an audit is good medicine, frequently should help. It's just that we're trying to facilitate that through these tools. Okay. The next one is, we're going to change that, are we, Tanya?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There we go. Now, do you always use a common audit template when you do your audits, or are they free form, perhaps different companies that you hire to help you use whatever they use? And so the point being, there may be some inconsistency of results. Right, so we got a pretty definitive answer here that the majority, 74%, seem to be using a common audit template. Now, there's lots of assessments, lots of audits that can be done, and audits can be done for different purposes. So I was assuming that you were responding to the question about maybe a compliance audit or a corporate audit that you have internally, that you're looking at your total facility process safety performance, how compliant are you to your internal and external requirements. So there you are. Was that rigged? It's exactly 2/3, 1/3. But that's interesting. And I'm sure for those, and we can have a discussion here, this is going to be an open forum. We can say, well, those who don't use a standard one, how do you maintain some consistency, and how can you share the results? Be interested in that, because we think that our tool allows you to do either a standardized template that they actually can't change the questions. They can't change the ranking. So there's some rigor there, like a standardized college application test. That isn't always applicable. You sometimes want to have a more special audit or a free form audit, and sometimes you want to encourage people to ask questions that aren't on your protocol. And so they ask a standard question, but then they could ask 3 more. And we can do both. We can add questions. So could you go to the next one, please? So do you use some kind of a digital system for recording this information, and, like you saw here with Acuity? And do you use, there's plenty of ways to do this. Some people I have seen over the years simply take experienced people, they ask free-form questions, almost shooting from the hip, if you will. They're, experienced, educated, knowledgeable people, And, but you don't have a protocol, and you actually don't put the protocol in your report. And so you're not entirely sure what questions were actually asked. And that's okay if it produces results. But there's something to say about the rigor of a standardized set of questions, at the very least, to promote a standardized understanding of where you are and be able to compare that information, in our opinion. So we have, so far, the majority of people not using it, but it's fairly close, 56% to 44% of those that responded. So that's good. Thank you for that. So again, it's not imperative that you do that. We feel that you could launch this to all your sites. All your sites today you can have unlimited number of sites that have access to the tool. And I could say, all right, I want to launch that to everybody. They just create an account, log in, just like any cloud tool. Now answer these questions and provide documentation to let me know why, supporting the answers you gave. And I can almost immediately get a response across my organization on a standardized application. Next and last question, please. So do you take your audits and the data from those audits, and do you summarize them and do statistical analysis, comparison, and perhaps benchmarking, either across the organization or to benchmark to industry best practices? Now, of course, I think you can imagine the benefits of being able to do that. Some people do that at a very high level. They may report to management, yes, we have 30 audits to do across our global sites, and this is the kind of trends we found, and they summarize it. Usually it's an extra effort. They summarize it from going through a lot of manual reports and so forth. Here, as you saw with the dashboard, you can pull it all together and basically dice and slice this any way you wish and get that information out. And then over time, by the way, this becomes a very rich data source of big data that can be used for lots of other purposes. Like, where should I invest going down the road if we're finding a trend that on all of our audits, mechanical integrity is the most significant problem we have? Yeah, so people are doing something, it sounds like, and I'm interested to know, what, to do exactly what we're saying, which proves, I think, that at least a lot of us believe that there's some benefit to that. And so we're trying to support that, trying to make it easier, faster to do, almost automatic, and then have this rich data source for that purpose. Yeah, so that's good. I think we can be done with the slide presentation, and I'm happy to have a little conversation with whatever time we have left, Tanya. So as I understand it, and you can check me, let's see, we started at 20 after. Are we done now? Is it time up? I don't hear you.
Hi, sorry.
There it is. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah, I was going to say we have a couple more minutes. If anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat or raise your hand and unmute your mics. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, one thing I would say is that I'm obviously not showing the tool other than some screenshots, but it is a fully working platform. It was a pretty big investment for us. I'd be very interested to see companies participate in a free beta test with us. I'm looking for 10 companies that would like to try this out and give us feedback, and that might be interesting for you too. And if anyone's intrigued by that idea, you can, let us know. We'd appreciate that a lot.
I think Anthony had some questions.
I do. Hey,
Hey,
Dave,
Tony.
interesting.
How are you?
I was wondering if you have like insights from what you're finding. For example, I wouldn't be surprised if mechanical integrity ITPM wasn't one of the high ones. What are the others?
Well, we do have some of that. We have the ability to look across what we've done. We're doing a lot of trials with it, and these trials are actual studies. And we're finding several things. We're finding that there's, all of the usual things that are causing trouble are popping up here. But we have a standardized protocol. It has nearly, I think it's 900 questions, and the most thorough one we have. And so if companies want that deep a dive, there's a number of questions about each of the elements. We've built it around the CCPS 20 element RBPS model. And so it's not only, the 14 elements of the traditional OSHA model. And so we're finding culture is a real issue. We're finding mechanical integrity is a real issue. And we're seeing that some of these, there isn't, at least for a lot of companies, particularly global companies, international companies, they're not necessarily using to their best advantage the full risk-based process safety model as well. So when we apply that, almost unfairly because they haven't really set up programs for all of that, we find those elements to be the weakest, of course. And so it actually inspires them. We have one company that we started out manually, and then we've been using this tool. It's a European company. That's 3 different times we've done this every 3 years. The last 2 times has been using this tool. And we're producing this scoring system. And number one, they did rather poorly to their surprise in the beginning, and we've elevated them up. So they appreciate the standardized testing, if you will. The transparency of the tool, because they can see where it is that they failed. It's like taking in America, the SAT test for school aptitude, and then being given the test results back so that you can understand exactly where you went wrong and how you could improve yourself. And we think that's the trick to continuous improvement. We're not trying to, you can use this tool for, if you will, a cooperative study, especially using Zoom or what have you. We can go through questions together. We can explain to them, let's be honest about what you have. I don't have that. Well, let's score you together. And then let's see where you are. Now, they have their marching orders in a more complete way, in a more thorough way. I hope that answers at least some of your questions, Tony.
It did. I'll tell you the other benefit, because we've done this within our company, is beauty charts, so to speak, holding up who's doing okay, who's not doing so well, if you have multi-sites with the same protocol being asked. It's helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you saw that, I don't know whether you saw, but I can share my screen again and show you. One of the features of the tool that we have is we have an analytics dashboard. So, of course, all things are possible with data. You can take any of the questions or any of the summary, like let's do it by how you scored for an element. So since we have the RBPS tool, it's centered around the RBPS tool as a primary template that we use. We have a pretty well thought out scoring system. Everything is normalized to 100%. So then we have a multi-level maturity curve associated with that. So we're expecting companies that if they set a goal and they want to be excellent, they've got to be up here. If they're not up here, they're not excellent. And so, it's a little shocking the first time people use it because they've never had such a deep dive. But then they can see it better than if someone just came in and picked on them for one thing or the other randomly. That's our thought. But yes, the beauty, I haven't heard that in a while, but the beauty contest, right, where you lay everybody up there, no manager wants to be the ugly one, right, that doesn't get picked.
Dave, there was a question in the chat. Are you considering potential to benchmark against other companies?
Yeah, of course, with data privacy, we can't just do that automatically. So when we go commercial on this, and this is something I'm interested to try, is our companies willing, to share this information on an anonymous way? If I think that there's two styles of audits that they could use the tool for right today. One would be that it's their own private information. They don't want to share that. The other would be maybe some sort of a standardized test. And for that, we don't mind, trying this out. The benefit, of course, is that if this, we're thinking this could be an extremely low cost, highly popular, global tool. And if it was adopted, as I just said, it could be powerful in that it's going to be the richest source of such data widely available at a low cost. Then a lot of people would use it. And we think that'll help the industry. And so maybe they would share that because they would be careful and have it anonymous, the anonymous part, as opposed to using it for their own private information. Any other questions? If not, you got a lot of interesting things for the next day and a half, and I wish you well on all that and all your process safety activities. Thank you very much for your attention.